do you need term insurance? The answer to that is quite simply, do you have anybody in your family counting on you if you should pass away? Okay? Does anyone require that income? Okay? If you're single, then you just need a bare minimum amount. Okay? Unless you have a child or something like that you're still supporting. But you know that you don't need a heck of a lot of money. If you're married or you have children or potentially parents that you have to support, that's when you need to have this capability, okay? And as I said, when you're young, it's pretty cheap. Most companies will give you 1 times your salary as a benefit. If they're going to offer life insurance, it's going to be 1 times your benefit, 1 times your salary. But in order to actually honestly take care of somebody else, you'll probably need 8 to 10 times your income in that type of insurance. Okay? It gets expensive, but just understand the purpose behind it. And as I said, if you have nobody counting on you, then the basic benefit from your company is probably good. There's all sorts of other insurance plans. I won't get into them. I'll just say that they have all sorts of gimmicks associated with them besides insurance, besides the idea of insuring your life. And these tend to get much more expensive, and they're usually frowned upon as a result of that. Okay? If you're given it automatically for free, yay, great, fantastic, I like it. If you're asked to pay for these sorts of insurances, I would shy away because it's a lot cheaper to go and get an independent insurance policy. Okay? So that's life insurance, and as I said, that just ensures that if you were to die, your heirs would be taken care of, your beneficiaries would be taken care of. There's also things called disability insurance. So, what do you think disability insurance covers?
Your disability.
If you become disabled, right? You know, permanently disabled or even temporarily disabled. They're generally broken down into 2 types, short-term disability and long-term disability. Short-term disability is often paid for by the company itself, and what that fundamentally means is, you know, you find out all of a sudden that you are going to have a heart valve replaced, okay? And you are going to go in the hospital, and it's going to be 5 weeks, 6 weeks of physical therapy afterwards that you're not going to be able to work at, okay? Well, if that time frame is, the company puts money aside for those sorts of events, and that's what the short term implies, is that if it's something short, but at the end of that 6 weeks, you're going to be back on your job, fully functioning, and everything's great, that works well, okay? And they'll usually fund that at 100%. And it's going to be various times when the short-term disability kicks in, but it's usually about 6 months. In other words, if you are sick for less than 6 months, it'll be covered at 100%, and your company will pay for it. Okay? Some of them will have different policies, but just understand that short-term means less than about 6 months. Okay? Long-term means that you've got a situation in which you will probably never be able to return to that position again. Okay? You develop a very serious disease or something that would ever prevent you from going back to your position. And this is insurance that basically says that if you ever get into that situation, you're not going to be left out in the cold. You're not going to get fired and left out in the cold. We can't hold your job for you forever, but we will make sure that you are able to qualify for some benefits underneath this program. Usually you pay for the long-term disability insurance. Okay, so that's something that you're paying for. Again, it's just to prevent catastrophe from happening in your life. These are usually pretty cheap policies. You know, tens of dollars per paycheck.
Are these things that happen like on the job, or is it just like personal?
No, well, it can be either way. It can be either way. If it's truly work related, there is something I haven't put on here that's help me with it, people. Workman's comp.
Oh,
Okay, workman's compensation, okay, which is a similar sort of program. Some companies will have workman's compensation. That is exclusively if you were to be hurt while performing a duty associated with the job, okay? And that's the employer pays for the costs associated with that. Short-term and long-term are usually some sort of health-related things. Short-term, again, is just if for whatever reason you can't perform your job. It may be something that's related to something that occurred on the job. It may not be, but depending on how they want to take care of the pool, and lots of workman's compensations are run through the state or through an independent insurer, so they have separate rules. Okay. Short-term, as I've defined here, is more just a company benefit, saying that we understand life happens, and frankly, basically what they're saying is that we expect that probably everyone, if you work for us for 40 years, for your whole career, that one time during that 40 years, you're going to have to use this. So that's how they kind of figure it out. Okay, they don't think it's going to be a lot, but it could happen at some point in there. Okay, the long term is you develop muscular dystrophy, multiple sclerosis, something that puts you in a wheelchair. Lots of times these sorts of insurance policies will be for something that quite honestly means that you're not going to live very long. Okay, but you don't want to be. They don't want to close you out just because you've gotten that disease. Long term, typically, depending on if you buy it or the company provides it, they cap your salary at something on 50–60% of whatever you make. They do not want this to be an incentive for you to be trying to take this benefit if you're not truly in that situation. Okay? Makes sense. They would rather have you work than be in the situation. But they figure that the 60% basically covers your basic needs. And that gets coordinated with what we talked about before when I talked about Social Security and there were disability benefits associated with that. All of that stuff gets associated with it, okay? But you typically, regardless of whether you buy it through your company or buy it independently, you're typically paying for those costs. Okay? Last one here is just, it's kind of I'll say a gimmick a little bit. It's accidental death and dismemberment, which just means, besides actually dying, it's a term life insurance policy that will pay out not only if you die, but if you lose an arm, lose an eye, or lose a leg. The original ideas. So if for some reason you were to any of these things occurred, and they occurred because it was an accident, that can't occur because of something biological. Okay? Then they'll pay out. They'll make a payout associated with that particular thing. Generally, what happens is this and that will address what you need here. Okay. So as long as you've got the disability and the term insurance, then you're kind of covered with AD. Okay, retirement plans. And I want to just cover some of the basic plans that you'll see. First of all, I think most of you probably sat in when I started talking about, does anyone remember the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire talk that we did at Fun Day?
here we do.
Okay. Do you remember the number I gave you on what you needed to invest in order to be a millionaire?
I think that was either $5 or $7 a day from the age of 20.
Yeah, it probably was close. I think what I recall was something like $140 to $197 a month.
Oh,
A
okay.
month is being what you would have to invest. If you wanted to be a millionaire, if you started when you're age 20 and wanted to be a millionaire by age 70, if you invested it in the stock market, put that in quotes, you'd be a millionaire by age 70 if you put in $150 or $197 a month, starting at age 20. Okay. The point here is, and the reason they bring this up when you start this first job is by doing this, they want you to get going early. Okay, so they want you to start thinking about these things and investing early. That's why a lot of companies throw it in. And there are really two different types of thoughts here, and then there's a variant on the second thought. So there's what were called defined benefit plans or pension plans, and then there are defined compensation plans, which gets a little muddled here, but just understand, a pension plan fundamentally is a position in which you are required to put in 7, 10, 15% of your income, okay, straight off the top of your salary. That goes into a fund. You continue on that fund for 30 years, or wherever it has, whatever the age cutoff limit is. Once you reach a certain point, at that point, you're eligible to draw off of the fund, and it's generally going to be tied to like 60% of your current salary. Okay? So it means that when you retire, the idea is when you retire, you will have a permanent salary that's somewhere on the order of 60% of what your last salary is before you retire for the rest of your life. Okay? That's pretty straightforward. It gets really complex because, first of all, very few non-governmental employers will offer these plans anymore. They're becoming very much out of phase. Fundamentally, companies don't want to assume that risk. And so you're primarily going to see a pension plan if you're a firefighter, policeman, government worker, and to a certain extent they have for school teachers. A lot of even the government positions are getting out of it. But just understand that you essentially have no choice if you're in a pension plan. They take the money out regardless. The good thing about that is, if you work for that company for 30 years and you retire with them, you actually get probably quite a bit of money from the plan. And the plans do pay well. The bad side of this is if you leave after 10 years, you make it zero out of it. Okay, you're putting money in the expectations that one day you'll be able to qualify for it, and they have predefined minimums and maximums and at what point that you qualify for that.
And that's called vesting. So
Vesting.
they'll tell you what your vesting period is. And so if you're not working for that company
Thank you.
if you quit that company before your vesting period is over, you get nothing. Or you don't get what the employer has put in, which there's a vesting period on some of those other things as well.
And they usually tailor a pension plan as well, especially in the old days, where you would get very, very little out of that plan if you work for the company for, say, 20 years, but if you work for 30 years, then it's what they used to call a hockey stick up, if you can think about how a hockey stick is shaped. The more that you go up, the longer you work, you finally reach this nice pinnacle, and in the end, it'll get capped out typically, but in the end, it will be somewhere around 60%. But if you leave, even after 20 years at a position like that, it might only be the equivalent of, say, 10% or 20%. So they were nice because, like I say, it's a guaranteed amount coming from a company or a municipality or something like that. Good or bad, they exist and you have zero choice. The other ones you do have a choice in. Okay, so most companies have gone over to a retirement plan that requires you as an individual to put in an amount of money. So you're going to be putting in money, and the company will match some of that money. And so they'll put in, if you put in 6%, they may put in 3%. If you put in 8%, they'll put in 4%. Okay, every company is a little bit different on their match. They all, I believe, by law have to match a certain amount in a certain way if they open up these plans. And they were named after the tax code, because the nice thing about this money is that when you put your money in, there are tax implications associated with it. Okay, so the original ones were called 401k plans. And what that meant is if you put in $10,000 a year into that plan, Uncle Sam would say that I'm not going to tax you on that $10,000 that you put into the plan. this year. You can write that off your taxes. I'm gonna collect that money from you when you take the money out of that account. So when you become retired and take the money out of the account, that's when I'm gonna get the money from you. Okay, so they tax you when you withdraw the money from your 401k account. The idea being that, let's say, going back to our example, putting in $197 a month in the 401k, if you took 197, and I haven't done this, but if you took a number like 197 a month, times, well, let's do it. Let's say it's $200 a month, times 12 months in a year, that's about $2,400, times 40. Okay? So, anybody good with math on that?
I'm doing the math.
So put it on me.
$2,400 times 40,
It's gonna be 80,
it's about
90
what, like
96,000.
So you've put in, over that 40 years, $96,000, and it's worth roughly $1 million, because it's made money back from the investments, okay? So, yay, I'm a millionaire. Well, guess what? You take $1 million out, you're paying taxes on $1 million. Okay, so all the investments come out, and you pay taxes as if this was money from when you originally got your paychecks.
Oh,
Yeah, kind of good, kind of bad, but that's the way the 401k works. 503B is very similar. 401ks are for companies, and 503Bs are typically for nonprofits and schools.
just to be clear, so they still take out the taxes either way, even when, so they don't tax it when you put it in, but when you take it out, they're gonna tax it either
Yep.
way. That's-
The idea behind that though is that you're going to be making less money because you're not working, and you're not going to pull out $1 million all at once. You would pay yourself in payments. So the idea is that you'll be at a lower tax bracket than you were when you were working, so you actually end up spending less in taxes at that time. So because you're not working, right? So that's the idea behind it.
Okay.
Okay,
Got it.
and as Daniel said, it's very valuable because if you pull it out, if you do get to age 70, let's say, and you have $1 million in your account, and you say, great, you're gonna be probably pulling out just the minimum in those first few years because, gee, you don't know how long you're gonna live. And you're gonna have to live on this for a while. So you take out a little bit, and then again, it's because of this progressive tax situation, it's generally a lower tax rate.
Okay.
Okay? The flip side of that, though, is this, something that was created 15 years ago? Do you know, Daniel?
I don't know exactly, but yeah, about 15, 20 years ago.
15, yeah, so roughly that, that were called Roth IRAs. And they come now to also Roth 401k options. These are very similar. The idea behind the Roth is that you don't get the tax break up front, but when you take it out after 50 years, it's never taxed. It's taxed once and then never taxed again. Okay, so if you put the money in now, and you're going to be paying taxes on $200, okay? So your tax savings on $200, let's say it's 30% tax bracket that you get into, depending on what your salary is, but let's say it's 30%, $200 or 30, so you're going to be paying, you'd be saving $60 in taxes now, okay? Flip side of that is you're paying the extra $60 in taxes right now, but then you never get taxed on it again. Okay, and that's what the idea behind a Roth is.
So that would be more beneficial if you're still continuing to work, maybe after 70?
No, well, actually, where the Roth comes in is when it's your people's age.
Oh.
Okay, because you pay more now taxes, but if you allow that to grow, back to our example, if you pay the taxes on all the amounts that we owe over 50 years, when you're done, you have $1 million that's tax-free. Okay, that the government's never going to tax again. So you can take the money out for whatever essentially you want at that point in time. Okay, you can balance it. You generally want to balance some money in that account and some money in that account because you can't afford to take some money out of the 401k and pay some taxes on it as long as it doesn't affect your tax situation. Okay, these get into some really complex questions about what to do, but I will say in general, when you're young and first starting out, if you can learn not to try to raid this account or take money out of this account over the 50 years that you're working on it, you will be better off paying the taxes up front. Okay? Than you would be in having tax savings. But people can run all these calculations, but fundamentally it just boils down to how much time is it going to be in there, how much is it going to grow in investments and everything else. Okay? But bear in mind, not all companies offer a Roth. Okay, some only offer a traditional, what they call a traditional 401k, or a 503b if you work for a specific segment of the economy. Okay.
One more question, with the, like, transferability of it, like, will it be able to transfer to different companies? Maybe if the company doesn't even have that plan?
So what happens is, yes, so one thing, first of all, the difference between this and a pension plan, you're investing in yourself, essentially, okay? You never lose the money, it's always there, okay? And there's no guarantee on what that money will be in the end, because that's, again, on you to make sure that it's funded, but you never lose the money. In terms of a company, if you leave the company, they will almost always tell you that you can keep the money in their account. There's certain benefits for them to have you keep the money in their account, or you can transfer. And if you don't want to keep it in their account, then you can transfer it into, and I didn't put it on here, but it's called an IRA, or an individual retirement account.
And if your other company offers a 401k, a lot of times you can roll it over, but you only have a certain amount of time to do that. So if you, let's say, take a check and you have, I think, 60 or 90 days to roll it over, otherwise you're on the hook for the tax bill. It's considered a withdrawal. So you know, when you go to another company, you'd want to find out right away if you can either enroll that in their 401k or just put it in an IRA. It's up to you what you want to do with it. But yes, they're transferable. And you get to manage your investments as well. Like he said, it's on you. So one thing I would say is if you do get a 401k, don't primarily put all your eggs in that company's stock. Make sure that you diversify.
We're down to 20 minutes, just for all of us.
Okay, and I'm probably going on meandering a little bit here. I wanted to talk a little bit about what Danny was saying there in terms of choices. You will be offered, and there's basically three categories of choices, okay? There's what are called CDs, or money market accounts. There are what are called bonds, accounts, and then there are stocks that are put into them, okay? CDs are traditionally bank-type accounts, or accounts that run through a bank. They pay essentially something slightly higher than what a savings account at a bank would run. Okay, and it varies depending on how they work, but they do not pay the percentages that you would need to be a millionaire that we were talking about before. Okay, these are meant to be very safe, low risk, low reward type of investments. Okay, the second one are called bonds, and basically you're either funding the government, the U.S. government, or a corporation. You're lending them money with a bond. So you essentially lend them money on the agreement that they will pay you that money back at the end of the bond term, which may be like 10 years. Plus, they're going to be giving you monthly or quarterly payments along the way. So they agree up front with a bond that I'm going to be paying you 4% a year, 5% a year, whatever the number is, for the next 10 years on this money that you've lent me. Okay, and those numbers are going to be higher, the percentages are going to be higher than it would be on a CD rate. Okay, and that includes, like I say, there's a couple of flavors. One of them is loaning the money to a corporation, the other one is loaning it to the U.S. government. I don't know if you know this or understand this, but the U.S. government has a deficit, which means we spend more as a country than we take in taxes. And we've done that for quite a long time. Again, one of those political things, whatever you think that's good or bad, that's the way the reality is on that, okay? Just bear in mind what that means is it means that the government, in order to pay continue to be spending at that rate needs to borrow money, and they do it through bonds. Okay, so you can buy US government bonds. And again, they're sold at an auction, so those rates vary and stuff like that, but it's higher than a CD, lower, but it's riskier, but fundamentally, you're going on the fact that the company that you're lending the money to, or the government, is going to eventually pay you back. Okay, so government bonds tend to be a lot more secure than corporate bond, but as a result of that, they pay less on interest. Okay. The last one here are stocks. Okay, do you guys understand what a stock is?
Basically, is it like you're paying to support a company, like in their? I think that's what it's kind of like.
Anybody else? That's not it.
Okay.
You're basically paying to own a piece of the company. And so as an owner, you either get a return on the value or you get paid a dividend, depending on the company. You're a shareholder, make
It
decisions.
represents one fraction of the ownership of that company, as Dan has said. And as I said, there are a couple different ways that stocks make their money back. Corporations will pay back the owners. You know, if they have a good year, they say, yeah, you as an owner should get this money back, and they pay that, and that's something called a dividend. Or they say, look, owners, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this money and reinvest it, and we're gonna open up this new business here, and we're gonna make you so much more money down the road. And if people actually agree with that, then the ownership of that company increases in value, okay? And so what they'll do is people trade these things, okay? You believe that St. Vincent De Paul is a great corporation, okay? And you're willing to pay $100 for a share of St. Vincent De Paul, okay? Tomorrow you find out that the CEO has been, some allegations of embezzlement. You may not feel that great about owning this company anymore, okay? And the value might go down. Or conversely, you might find out that he's the most ethical guy in the world, he's doing the best thing in it, and he's gonna grow that company, and all of a sudden everybody says, hey, that's a great buy. We need to increase that. How much will you sell me your $100 share for? $120? Great. I'll buy it. And that's fundamentally what's occurring. If you ever heard of the stock market, that's what's going on every day. Is people are going back and forth. Do you how much do you think this corporation called Honeywell is worth that I work for? Okay? Is it worth X dollars? Is it worth Y dollars? Okay? Honeywell, for instance, a year ago was worth something like $100 for one share of Honeywell. Okay, today it's worth $124. Okay, most companies in the last 3 months have gone up in value. That's the reality of it. Okay, the problem is, again, if all of a sudden the CEO gets accused of being an embezzler and a bad guy, all of a sudden people don't want to buy Honeywell stock, and tomorrow it may be worth $90 a share. Okay, stocks can be very volatile. Okay, so they can go up and down in value. You should never expect that stocks will continue to rise always, because they don't. But here's the good thing. Stocks have performed more. They've made more money for people over long periods of times than any of these other two. So if you have a window of investing that's more than 20 years, 10 years, you're better off putting them in stocks. So my point to you here is, if you're given a choice, you're probably best off, if you have the Roth option, choose a Roth. If you have a 401k option, not that with your company, choose the 401k. Companies will match a certain amount, and it's generally best to go up to the match, and then probably at your young age put them into stocks. And there's almost always something called an S&P 500 fund, which diversifies it over 500 companies. So if one individual CEO is bad, we have 499 other ones who could be extremely ethical. Okay, so it's much lower fluctuating. But the returns that I talked about in terms of millionaire is as if you invested in this. Okay. And I'm going to, at this point, I'm gonna skip this, maybe, because I don't wanna subtract time from you, Daniel.
Okay.
Unless there's some points you'd like me to hit here.
I definitely think that creating a budget is huge,
Okay,
especially, you know, at this point where you start a career and the pay is not as high as you'd like it to be, but all those wants and needs are. So I would talk a little bit about the budget.
okay. Well, we'll go, yeah, so we've talked a lot about budgeting. I mean, if something shouldn't be boring you to death right about now, if something should be, it would be about budgeting. But as Daniel said, when we've talked about it, the key to budgeting is know exactly what you need, okay? You need shelter, you need food, you need clothes, you need transportation and utilities. Okay, those are needs. Everything else is essentially a want. And even on those needs, you do not need a 5-bedroom home in the best zip code in the world to call that your amount that you want to pay for your living costs, your shelter, okay? You need something that meets your minimum needs. So, what is a budget? Fundamentally, a budget is a plan, and it just tells you how you're going to spend your money over the course of the month. Okay, and you get to decide on how you want to spend that. Nobody's going to tell you you're right or wrong with your budget. Okay, but what you do need to be honest with yourself about is what is really required for you to live versus what is something that's nice to have. Hopefully you've got more money, especially if you're making more than you've ever seen before. You're going to have more money, and that allows you then to figure out how you can spend that money, additional money, on wants. Okay. One important thing here, though, is especially you guys are at a great time. How many of you guys feel like you could spend all the money in the world right now that would have no repercussions on you? No one. Okay. How many of you feel like some days I wonder how I just get by? Okay. Honest man here. Okay. Yeah, there's times when you look at your budget and say, how am I going to get to this? The good thing is if you get a job that's now all of a sudden paying you 50% more than you've ever seen in your life, a lot of those worries go away. The trick, though, is to make sure that you learn to live below your money. Okay? So if you live the way you're living now, don't be extravagant, then you're going to find all of a sudden that you have this whole bucket of money that you never knew what to do with before. Okay? And I'll cover these really fast. You need to save some money because you never know when it's going to be a rainy day. Okay?